My parents refused to pay for my college tuition, so I asked my grandparents to pay for it, but this made them angry and they cut me off saying that I have ruined their reputation. I am 17 and I am supposed to start college in a couple of months. Recently, my parents told me that they did not have any money set aside for me, so I would have to make my own way. I already knew that, and so I had taken certain measures to prevent myself from getting into any sort of financial trouble before I was supposed to start college. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I had a job. It did not pay much, but at least I had some money for myself and could at least travel to the location of my college, if not anything else. When I quit my job because of them, I did something else, and now I'm getting a lot of hate for it. I have already been accepted into the school of my choice, and I have every intention of attending. But before I get into why I had a fallout with my parents, I need to tell you guys certain things about them so everything makes sense. My parents did not grow up poor, and for a really long time, we were pretty well off. All of my grandparents were actually family friends first, and that's how my parents met each other. They have known each other since they were kids, and it was always the plan for them to get married when they grew up. When they got married, they also started their own cafe business together. Their parents invested in it, and for a really long time, things were great for them. Then I was born. They were still doing pretty great, and I grew up in a loving home and never had to worry about money. The cafe that my parents run did moderately well. It's pretty popular among people who live in our neighborhood, and they made a nice living from it, enough to call ourselves comfortable. Everything was great until the virus in 2020 hit, and then obviously we had to shut down the cafe. For months, we had to rely on our savings to get by. Even after things started opening back up again, our cafe was not able to take off like it was supposed to. For the past couple of years, the business has been in trouble, and my parents have been struggling to keep up with the bills and everything. My dad has even had to get another job in a small-scale marketing firm and manage the cafe part-time while my mother tries to revive the business. It has been a sorry state of affairs for the past few years, and I think I have been very affected by it because I was never used to any of this. I never had to think about money before, but all of a sudden, we had been thrust into a life where we had to think twice before any sort of purchase, and it was very difficult for me to adapt to it. I might sound spoiled, but I think anybody who has been through this kind of situation would agree with me. I mean that I had to do something about my life because it had become very evident that I could not rely on my parents anymore. I'm not saying this because I want to mock them, I'm just saying this because I really could not rely on them since I would feel bad if I had to. I was acutely aware of how hard they were trying to keep our family afloat, and I knew that they were doing their best. I could not ask them for money because I knew that they were already struggling, and I did not want to make them feel even smaller by asking them for financial help only to be told that they could not afford to do that for me. So, I decided that I was going to get a part-time job, but I was going to keep that information a secret from them because I knew that they were too proud to admit that they were poor now. Everybody knew about the situation with our family and the business, but my parents pretended like nobody knew and tried to keep up appearances, making sure that they maintained the same kind of lifestyle that we had been used to. They did not want anybody to guess that we were not doing financially well anymore and did their best to cover everything up. So, whenever we would attend family parties, they would make it a point to dress up to the nines and would even rent a car since we had to sell the one we had. I felt kind of sorry for them and was quite embarrassed by it because I knew that everybody else knew the truth, yet they were still pretending to have the same lifestyle. Nobody ever said anything to them or confronted them about it because I guess everybody else felt sorry for us as well. My grandparents were the most affected by this because these were their kids who were suffering. I knew that they had offered to help them out financially quite a lot of times, but my parents were too proud to accept any sort of money from them. Whenever I would visit my grandparents, be it my mom's parents or my dad's parents, they would always have the same complaints against my parents and would keep telling me to try and convince them to take their help. But I didn't try to speak about that to my parents because I did not think it was my place to say anything. I had tried it once in the initial stages of our cafe's decline and told my parents that I thought they should accept help from their parents, and they had been very upset with me that day. I did not want to repeat that episode because I knew that they would find it very offensive if I tried to talk to them about the family's finances because they thought that it was me trying to question their authority and acumen. They believed that it was disrespectful and it was not my place to comment on any of that, so I stayed out of it and just tried to get by on my own. 2 years ago, I got my first part-time job at the bowling alley, and it was pretty easy to keep it a secret from my parents because the place where I worked was a little distance away from where we lived, so we did not really have anybody coming in who would know me. I would tell my parents every day that I was staying back after school for football practice, which was not technically untrue because I did stay back for that purpose, but then I would head to the bowling alley and work there. I did not earn a lot of money, but at least it was something, and it gave me a sense of accomplishment. However, they had to let me go after a few months as they had found a full-time employee and it made more sense to hire him instead. It was nothing personal, and my manager there even wrote me a letter of recommendation for my next job as a cashier at the nearby bookstore. That was a slightly riskier job because the place was much closer to my house and neighborhood than the other one, and I was constantly afraid that somebody I knew would walk in and then my cover would be blown. My parents would get to know, and I would have to hear it from them. However, I did not have the option of quitting because I knew that I had to earn at least some money. Even if it was not enough to cover my college tuition, I knew that my parents would not be able to pay it all off and I would either have to take out a student loan or work my way through college. So, it was better for me to start early and start earning before I headed to college. It went on for a couple of months, and a few of my friends knew about it, but I made sure that they told their parents to keep it a secret from my parents and they were nice enough to oblige. I almost worked there for a year before, a couple of months ago, my parents finally found out. It was a neighbor of mine, and she was a particularly talkative one. I should have known that I was done for as soon as she walked into the bookstore. Honestly, I never would have expected the lady to even be able to read a magazine, let alone a book, but I guess she was getting a gift for somebody. She had never come to the bookstore before, and as soon as I saw her, I knew that I was found. She did not even say anything to me when she saw me working there and had minimal interaction. We did not say anything to each other, but she kept smiling at me very smugly. I knew that she would go back and immediately tell my parents about it, and that's what happened. When I got back home that day, my parents were absolutely furious at me. I think they must have saying things to me for a whole hour. They believed that my going out of my way to get a part-time job and keep it a secret from them just showed my lack of faith in my own parents and said that they were very unhappy with me about my actions.